Anyway, I decided to come here to conduct a live stream on YouTube to address the upcoming event known as No King's Day, where I have heard that a lot of civilians here in the United States of America is going to go out and protest against Donald Trump for his actions perpetrated against civilians while in civil service. What I want to convey to people is this. You have to realize that going out in society and protesting against the unconstitutional acts of a tyrant with the intent just to hold signs or to throw rocks or to curse out the individuals in civil service who support the unconstitutional acts of President Donald Trump will not get you anywhere, especially not anywhere far. And history throughout this country, or the world for that matter, dictates that. You see, those in civil service are not afraid of civilians because those in civil service believe that civilians are subservient to them. That is because the way that many civilians have treated those in civil service as if they are these kings and queens, that they are not. So, because civilians have allowed those in civil service with the title of president, congressmen or women, governors, law enforcement personnel, military personnel, to believe that they are these godlike beings that they are not, that has enabled them to pursue that specific status here in this country while they were acting as civil servants. The fact of the matter is, when you look at the supreme law of the land, known as the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution for the United States of America, to include the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is the source of authority that those in civil service, to include us civilians, have as citizens of the United States of America. We all would recognize that many of the actions perpetrated against us by those in civil service are in essence unconstitutional. We will also realize that there are contingency plans put in place that were put in place many years ago that enables us, civilians, to do what is required to ensure checks and balances when those in civil service step out of line, as we have seen in recent years, specifically by President Donald Trump. Now, when you look at Article 21, paragraph 3 to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we will recognize that the will of the people shall be the basis for the authority of government. With that being said, that specific statement under that specific article, which is associated with the supreme law of the land, entails that we, the people, have far more authority over those whom we have elected or appointed into positions of public trust. It's not the other way around, y'all. After all, this is a government for the people, by the people, and of the people. That means that those in civil service were placed there by us to carry out our will under the Constitution, not theirs. And the sooner we all realize that as individuals, the sooner we can effectuate the changes in which those in civil service have failed in that endeavor to do so. I appreciate y'all, but I definitely have to speak about this because people have grown so ignorant of who is really in authority here in this country. Now, with that being said, we all do not have the right to keep and bear arms for no reason. That amendment specifically says that the right of the people shall not be infringed, right? So when you break down the Second Amendment to the Bill of Rights, which is a civil right, not a constitutional right, many people get that twisted. And we all know because it is a civil right, respectively reserved to the constituency, the civilians here in the United States of America, that those in civil service, whether associated with the centralized government of a state or the national government, cannot infringe upon under separation of powers, right? That power is reserved respectively to us. But the Second Amendment gives us a right to keep and bear arms, formulate militias, and eliminate anyone or anything that poses a threat to our safety and security. And that safety and security applies to everyone in each and every state that makes up this nation. That is what the Second Amendment to the Bill of Rights is for. Many of us have forgotten that because we have allowed, for the most part, our emotions to cloud our better judgment when it comes to the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, primarily based upon the mass shootings that have occurred throughout this nation in recent years. You know, I don't agree with restricting people's access to firearms through gun control because that violates the Second Amendment to the Bill of Rights. So any law that was designed to impede upon that liberty protected by the supreme law of the land is indeed unconstitutional. And what makes it hard for people to accept and acknowledge that fact is, like I said earlier, people's emotions clouding their better judgment. Now, I know, and I do not agree with the mass shootings that have occurred in this nation. I also do not agree that on account of what people have done to other people's kinsmen, that those actions should be utilized against people like you and I from keeping us from exercising that right to protect ourselves, our families, our friends. And for those of us who have good hearts, such as myself, even strangers. And there's many judicial precedents that substantiates what I said, because I do not say anything related to politics or law if there's not some form of legal authority to support specifically what it is that I'm saying. After all, I have studied law for over 2 decades. That's why I'm in a position to do these things, to educate the general population of matters of public importance, matters that those in civil service have neglected to inform us of. But they don't want us to know about these things, because if we know about the freedoms that we have, that gives us the sole authority over them, they will no longer be in this so-called position of power that they have considered themselves to be in. So, for anyone who's going to protest today with regards to this No King's Day event, my advice to each and every last one of you is to ensure that when you go out in the public, that you are carrying some form of firearm or firearms. That way, if things does not go the way that the Constitution and Bill of Rights and Declaration of Independence, to include the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, declares that they go, you all will be in a position to protect yourselves from those idiots in civil service who may become hell-bent on harming you because they disagree with the movement that many people will choose to establish in an endeavor to effectuate some form of change. Because like I said earlier, y'all, they do not care about signs. They do not care about us cursing. They do not care about people throwing rocks, because what the heck is a freaking rock going to do to an individual decked out in military gear, body armor? You throw a rock at some freaking body armor, the type of body armor that those in civil service have. It's not going to affect them. It's not going to harm them. It's only going to put them in a position to harm you. And if you don't have the appropriate armament to stand your ground with, you all, for those of you who do this, are going to fail. It's not about failing, especially not in this day and age. It's about prevailing. And we cannot do that if we're still dwelling in ignorance, if we're still allowing those in civil service to manipulate us through intimidation tactics into believing things about them and ourselves that are not true. And what I mean by that, they want us to believe that they are in control, that they are the leaders, the officials, when the fact of the matter is we are the leaders and officials. That's why we vote them into positions of public trust, to represent our interests under the Constitution. They are there for us. They don't call them civil servants for no freaking reason. They serve civilians. Civilians make up the American population. And because we do live in a democratic nation under a Republican form of government, that alone entails that we the people, me, you, we, have far greater authority than those whom we have elected or appointed to serve us in positions of public trust. And let's say they do, for some reason, overpower civilians and subject them to arrest. And ultimately, let's say that they choose to indict somebody for so-called violating the law. You know, one of the authorities that we have as individuals is the right to jury nullification. And many people do not understand the concept of what jury nullification means. But I'm going to tell you all what it means. And I'm not just going to tell you, I'm going to actually quote what it means, in which the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals judges have recognized on behalf of people like you and I presenting these claims before them through the act of judicial review. And here's what the judges say about the right of jury nullification, y'all. The case is United States versus Moreline. Okay? Great case. Found this case many years ago through my extensive studies of law, and figured I'd definitely keep note of it, just in case something like this ever happened. But United States versus Molan. Citation number 417 F.2D 1002. On page 1006 to that specific judicial precedent rendered in the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit in the year of 1969, Judge Sobolov, in writing for the majority of the judges on the panel at that specific moment in time, stated, and I quote, "We recognize, as appellants urge, the undisputed power of the jury to acquit, even if its verdict is contrary to the law as given by the judge and contrary to the evidence. This is a power that must exist as long as we adhere to the general verdict in criminal cases. For the courts cannot search the minds of the jurors to find the basis upon which they judge. If the jury feels that the law under which the defendant is accused is unjust, or that exigent circumstances justify the actions of the accused, or for any reason which appeals to their logic or passion, the jury has the power to acquit, and the courts must abide by that decision," end quote. You see how much authority that we, the people, as individuals have. We have the power to override any law, any instruction given to us by a judge, any piece of evidence presented on behalf of a police officer by a prosecuting attorney. It is us who holds the power. And jury nullification is a power that we have as civilians of the United States of America, to where we don't have to pick up arms to right a wrong that was perpetrated against one of our fellow men and women by some idiot in civil service. We have the power, but many people have been led to believe that the power belongs to the judge or some prosecuting attorney. That is not true from this specific judicial precedent. And many of you may be wondering, well, Okang, that is a Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals case and only applies to certain areas of the United States of America. But you all have to understand that this particular right is in the Black's Law Dictionary, a dictionary that is utilized in every freaking courthouse here in America. In addition to that, this case speaks volumes because, like I said earlier, it lets all of us know what authority we have as jurors if we are called to hear certain cases in a criminal trial setting. And we also have a power as grand jurors, same power. But grand jury's power is more extensive than even the power of the petty jurors, as I just mentioned in the United States versus Milan case. Unfortunately, I do not have that specific judicial precedent before me, so I cannot quote it to you all. But grand jurors, and mark my words, have the right to subpoena presidents, judges, governors. They have a right not to indict a person. They have a right to hold people in contempt. But they don't want us to know that, because if we know that and we invoke that right, it's going to show just how subservient those in civil service, such as the president, such as Donald Trump, is. And they don't want us to know what our power is, y'all, because they want to keep us blinded by the propaganda spewed from their lying mouths as that relates to them being the leaders, to them being the officials. But if they are the freaking officials and leaders, what the heck does that make us? The people who put them there, the people who pay their salaries. Without us, those in civil service would never be. But we will exist without them. Do you all understand the magnitude of what I just said? We do not need them to survive, but they need us. So that alone should cause each and every last one of you who is listening to me speak at this very moment in time, to anyone who may see this live stream after it ends, because I intend to publish it, just in case some people couldn't see it at the time that I came live. But we have to wise up, y'all. And I keep reiterating that because of the importance of it. Everybody, this is not a joking matter. But many people look at it as it is such a joke. But it can never be a joke when those in civil service usurp the privileged authority in which we have given them to succumb to acts of tyranny designed to oppress us, designed to encroach upon our civil, constitutional, and human rights, the very rights in which we put them in those positions of public trust to protect and defend from enemies both foreign and domestic. The only thing that they're going to understand is the right of revolution. And the right of revolution, it gives us the authority to eliminate those in civil service. And to clarify that, I'm going to read what the right of revolution actually means. It's coming from the Black's Law Dictionary. On page 1439 to the 9th edition's Black's Law Dictionary, the right of revolution is defined as, and I quote, the inherent right of a people to cast out its rulers, change its polity, or effect radical reforms in its system of government or institutions by force or general uprising, when illegal and constitutional methods of making such changes have proved inadequate or are so obstructed as to be unavailable, end quote. Now, when it says that the constitutional methods of making such changes have proved inadequate or are so obstructed as to be unavailable, we have to understand that when law enforcement personnel subject us to acts of physical assaults that leaves us severely injured and, based upon history, dead. And when we sue or choose to file criminal charges against those particular civil servants, how those within the judicial system, for the most part, always fail to even indict or convict those individuals by virtue of their official position or occupation, which makes the constitutional methods inadequate. And because people in civil service, like judges and prosecuting attorneys, to include those who are summoned as grand jurors, decline to indict, decline to prosecute these particular individuals out of fear of retaliation or just simply attempted to protect one of their colleagues. Those particular actions obstruct the availability of the constitutional methods that were put into place with regards to handling these matters in a judicial setting. So, with that being said, it is clear and evident from the definition of the right of revolution that we, at this current day and time can invoke that right with absolute certainty that we are in the right. Now, in support of what was said about the right of revolution as defined in the Black's Law Dictionary, the judges in the Supreme Court for the United States of America also agrees. And that agreement is found on page 440 under footnote 12 by Associate Justice Jackson in the case of American Communications Association versus Dials. When Judge Jackson, in concurring in the opinion, stated, and I quote, "This country, with its institutions, belongs to the people who inhabit it. Whenever they shall grow weary of the existing government, they can exercise their constitutional right of amending it or their revolutionary right to dismember or overthrow it." End quote. In writing that decision, Justice Jackson relied upon the inaugural address made by President Abraham Lincoln on March 4th, 1861. So you all see, the law supports us invoking these specific freedoms that puts us in a position to right the wrongs perpetrated against us by those in civil service. And that is a fact. So in closing, I will reiterate, for those of you who choose to go out and participate in the No King's Day event, do not go out there assuming that because you are protesting so-called peacefully, that you will not be subjected to violent behavior by law enforcement personnel, military personnel, to include other incompetent civilians who support those tyrants in civil service. You have to understand that law enforcement and military personnel are going to have on their person firearms amongst other armament for self-protection. That means that each and every last one of you should also have armament upon your persons, just in case you are put into a position to where it is either you or them. And if things go south, always remember that you have a right of revolution and we all have a right to jury nullification. Those are the two sole authorities that we as individuals have that we can utilize to ensure that the actions perpetrated against us by those in civil service does not go unchecked. With that being said, I hope you all have a nice day or night, depending on where you are. But I hope that for those of you who do go out, that you remain safe and vigilant and focused. And be ready to fight, y'all. Do not allow people to take y'all to jail because, the fact of the matter is, as the judges in the Supreme Court have said, in which I agree, we have a right to resist unlawful arrests or detentions perpetrated against us by law enforcement personnel. And when we do so, the judges in every courthouse within the United States of America cannot constitutionally penalize us as a result of invoking that specific right, in which the tribunal of the Supreme Court for the United States of America has recognized. So if you all are out there protesting, if you're out there invoking your right of revolution, that is a freaking right that you all have, that I have. I don't have no problem with invoking it. When I'm out and about tomorrow, I will be hosting the event, well, Juneteenth event, but I also heard that people are going to hold the event of No King's Day there as well. But I too will be in possession of a couple firearms. Matter of fact, I'm gonna take a couple just in case things do go left, just to ensure that I'm protected and the people around me. But we cannot be penalized for invoking rights that we have that are protected by the supreme law of the land. By invoking rights that are protected by law, we are in conformity with the law, which makes us law-abiding citizens. Any individual, whether that individual is a civil servant or another civilian, who disregards the rights that we have to do what it is we do that are protected by the supreme law of the land, will make them criminals, the felons that they truly are in the society that we live in. Don't be afraid, y'all. Do what it is that you have to do to get your point across, but also be in the position to physically fight, to physically combat them. And another thing that I want you all to understand is that it doesn't matter what Donald Trump says as president, right? Because the fact of the matter is, what he's doing will ultimately cause division amongst the ranks in military units. Because the fact of the matter is, I cannot see people's family members that are a part of the armed forces going after their kinsmen on behalf of some so-called order that Donald Trump has given them. I personally believe that they will turn on Donald Trump before they harm their loved ones. I know I would, and that's just being real. If I was in the armed forces and Donald Trump told me to go after, let's say, my mother, because my mother was exercising a freedom that I took an oath to protect and defend under the Constitution, I would turn against Trump and arrest that coward for civil rights violations, which no one has done to date. And for all those idiots in Congress and all these governors speaking negatively about Donald Trump, do not take what they're saying on face value, because if they truly wanted to do something about it, my people, they would have done so by now. What they're doing is spewing propaganda again, making us think that they have our best interests at heart, while yet they are too cowardly to do what is required to have Donald Trump removed or even imprisoned. There's nothing stopping those cowards from having that idiot impeached, y'all. And if he declines to get out of office once impeached, then that gives us, or those whom we placed into positions of public trust, the authority to go remove that coward by force. Real simple. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. The thing is, they are too cowardly to do what it is they should have done months ago. Another thing they can do, why not just make a law? You know, they always talk about illegal immigration. But the fact of the matter is, I think I got that. You know what? I did mix the articles up, if I'm not mistaken. The article that I was speaking about was Article 21. I believe paragraph 1 or 3. Article 21, paragraph 3. That's what states that the will of the people should be the basis for the authority of government. Article 13 to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights specifically says, under both paragraphs 1 and 2, in Cliff's Notes version, everyone has a right to leave his or her country or any country to go into another country. And once they get into the country that they choose to have gone to, they have a right to travel from border to border, city to city, county to county, town to town. And once in those specific locations, they have a right to residency. Okay? So if people have a right to come from one country to the other, if people from Mexico, because the government of Mexico signed the the United Nations Charter, which established the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is national and international law. So when that document was signed by the civil servants of Mexico and the civil servants here in the United States of America, it created the treaty. And we all know that up under Article 6 to the Constitution for the United States of America, all treaties are considered the supreme law of the land. So, with that being said, there is technically no such thing as illegal immigration. But again, many people are unfamiliar with their freaking rights. They're unfamiliar with the documents that substantiates the rights that we have. And for those who are not, they get so jealous of people in Mexico who come over here and create something big for themselves in which Americans have not yet created. And they want to blame Mexican people for their downfalls. And so, yeah, when some idiot in the civil service wants to create some statutory provision, claiming that if people don't come here legally, that they are illegal immigrants. But what is the heck that's coming in to the United States of America legally mean? I mean, really. Because like I said, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is the supreme law of the land. Anyone who exercises a right under that document are in conformity with the law, which makes them law-abiding citizens. So how is it under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 13, paragraphs 1 and 2 to be specific, is a man or woman who comes from another country into this country coming in here illegally? That is a question that many people must ask themselves. And stop allowing your emotions to cloud your better judgment. Because one of the things that many of us have to realize, for those of us who haven't realized it yet, is that when we violate or allow the rights of other people to be violated by those in civil service, we open up the doors for the freedoms that we cherish to be violated by those in civil service also. Remember that when you all go out here protesting. Now, I'm going to end this live stream for now, but I hope that something that I have said in this live stream thus far resonates with many of you to the extent that I'm hoping that it would or will. Because that is the only way that we are going to achieve the goals that we have set out to achieve in order to make this country and other countries better for us all.